Vox Machina has begun to quest for the vestiges of divergence, the only weapons powerful enough to defeat the Chroma Conclave. And while they have acquired the first one, it came at a heavy price. So grab your D20s and roll for initiative, because it is once again time for Cartoon versus Campaign. Greetings, fanboys and fangirls. I'm Erod, and I'm the Blockbuster Buster, and welcome to Cartoon vs. Campaign, where we compare The Legend of Vox Machina with the Dungeons & Dragons campaign that inspired it. Now, before we begin, the usual disclaimers. There will be spoilers ahead, so if you haven't seen The Legend of Vox Machina Season 2, or its corresponding episodes from Campaign 1 of Critical Role, you might want to stop the video here. You've been warned. Secondly, the main difference between the cartoon and the campaign this time around is that the order of events are dramatically different between the two. So, for the sake of clarity, I'm going to be following the order of events of the campaign. Alright, now that that's clear, let's begin.
Pass through fire.
In the cartoon, our heroes are on their way to Rhinecleft to meet with Osisa's mate, when they suddenly divert to help the people of Pyra. In the campaign, a few things happened before this point. When we last left off, Vox Machina went to Whitestone to regroup and recuperate after acquiring the Deathwalker's ward. First, our heroes have a meeting with Keeper Yenin to determine if the Deathwalker's ward and the Raven's Slumber are safe to use. During this meeting, not only do they get the green light from Yenin, but this is when they determine that the purpose of the necklace is to hold a creature inside. Furthermore, there is already a creature inside the necklace, and thanks to Vexalia's book, they determined that the necklace's current inhabitant is Pervan's faithful pet and companion, Goldrick, the Black Wolf, whom they agreed to release outside of Whitestone a little later. And now I have a bit of a shameful confession. Do you remember last episode when I said that in the campaign Vax didn't punch Percy? Well, I was wrong. At this point in the campaign, Percy approaches Vax privately to apologize to him directly for accidentally killing Vex, and Vexel then responds by, you guessed it, feeding him a knuckle sandwich. Again, my apologies for the mistake, but in my defense, this is a lot of information to comb through, so thank you for your understanding. Now, let's move on. Meanwhile, Grog and Scanlan are looking for something to do, when Grog announces that he needs to go make some boom boom. Now, when I first saw this scene in the cartoon, I honestly thought that Sam and Travis threw it into the animated series just to get a cheap laugh. Once again, I was so wrong. In both versions, Grog has an intimate conversation with Craven's Edge while making twosies. The only two big differences are that in the cartoon, the scene takes place on the path to Rhinecleft behind a rock, and Scanlan plays an original song.
In an outhouse on the edge of the world.
In the campaign, the scene takes place in an outhouse in Whitestone, and Scanlan plays the harmonica.
Oh, sorry.
So, after the most memorable exposition scene ever, Scanlan goes to collect the painting that he commissioned at the beginning of the story arc, and it is glorious. Meanwhile, the next morning, Vexalia finds her brother passed out in front of her bedroom door. She thanks him for saving her life and officially gives him the Deathwalker's ward from the Bag of Holding. But he doesn't put it on yet. So, do you guys remember during the Briarwood arc when Vox Machina comes across a stone giant's fortress on their way to Whitestone, and eventually they determine that this is where the Briarwoods got all the zombie giants that were patrolling the city at the time? Well, this is where they go to safely release Goldrick from Pervan's necklace. The usual Vox Machina shenanigans ensue. Vax officially puts on the Deathwalker's ward during this scene to convince Goldrick that he is indeed the new champion of the Raven Queen. But he does a terrible job of putting on the armor, and Goldrick is unimpressed. Keyleth tries to communicate with him using her Talk to Animals ability. Percy gets his hand bitten, and eventually, Goldrick gets bored of Vox Machina's nonsense and goes to leave the fortress. Thankfully, Grog stands in his path, sinks Craven's Edge into the ground, and shouts, "Heal!" And Goldrick officially starts to comply with the party. Our heroes then instruct Goldrick to guard Whitestone until the danger of the Chroma Conclave has passed. Goldrick complies and heads into the woods surrounding Whitestone, where he will live and hunt until his promise to Vox Machina is fulfilled. This is when Percy suggests to Vexalia to keep Trinket inside the necklace. Vex tries it out successfully in both versions, but in the campaign, Keyleth uses her powers to talk to Trinket and make sure that he's okay with going in and out of the necklace. Trinket responds that yes, he's okay with going in and out of the necklace as long as that is what Vex wants him to do. I love that bear. This is when Vax and Scanlan have their one-on-one conversation, the major difference being that in the cartoon they are both at a crossroads, while in the campaign, Vax is the one who is concerned about the bargain that he made, and Scanlan is just there to listen and provide his friend with counsel. The gnome bard just advises him to not dwell on the shit, and they move on. This is when our heroes make the conscious decision to go to Pyra next, as they know that it was one of the places that was attacked by the dragons. In the campaign, Pike doesn't go with them because... insert blind spot joke here. In the cartoon, no unanimous decision is made. Keyleth diverts to Pyra while the party is on its way to Rhinecleft when she sees that the city is under attack, so the rest of our heroes have no choice but to follow her and help. Technically, in both versions, the scene has the same structure. Our heroes arrive in Pyra, where they run into Sir Konos and Keyleth's dad, Corin, and they discover that the citizens of this humble burg are under attack by creatures that are pouring out of the fire plane, as Thordak left the rift open when he escaped. So our heroes jump into action, fight off the monsters, and help close the rift. Here are the differences. The biggest deviation from the campaign is that in the cartoon, this is when Keyleth inadvertently goes through her fire aramente. In the campaign, Keyleth goes through her fire armente much earlier, right after the trial of the Take, but before the Briarwood arc. In the cartoon, Keyleth enters the fire plane alone and fulfills her fire aramente without any help. In the campaign, Vox Machina enter the fire plane with her and provide her with a great deal of assistance. Also, while they're there, they spot Thordak flying overhead. Yes, Matt had been setting up the Chroma Conclave arc that early in the campaign. In the cartoon, our heroes run into Allura and Kima at Pyra, with whom they join forces to close the rift. In the campaign, however, these lovely ladies are not there. Our heroes join forces with a completely different guest character, Gurn Blanston, a dragonborn necromancer played by Nerdist co-founder Chris Hardwick. Gurn is a candle maker with a propensity to use undead and a flying broom during battle. Amidst this particular conflict, Gurn momentarily hands his flying broom to Vex after being badly burnt by lava, so he can have both hands free for spell casting. Vexalia then proceeds to help Gurn during his moment of intense pain by stealing his flying broom, by using sleight of hand to slip the broom into the bag of holding without anyone noticing. I'm not mad at Vex, I'm just disappointed. In the cartoon, the broom is one of the items that our heroes loot from Gilmore's during the Chroma Conclave attack, and Vex officially gets it when Scanlan gives it to her to use for firewood. Anyway, back to the battle. In the cartoon, Keyleth closes the rift alone in one of the coolest moments in the entire season. In the campaign, our heroes slowly shrink the rift using different methods, and it is Vax'ildan, believe it or not, who fully closes the rift by enveloping it in a magical item he just so happened to have called the Cape of the Molten Bank. While this action sequence is great in both versions, I think this is a part where the cartoon is definitely far superior.
Oh, my child. I thought...
I'm okay, Dad.
In the cartoon, this section concludes with a beautiful scene in which Sir Konos officially declares that Keyleth has fulfilled her fire aramente. In both versions, Coran voices how proud he is of Keyleth and encourages her to finish the rest of her aramente. Also, in the cartoon, this is when our heroes learn of Thordak's original defeat, as well as the fact that the city of Singorn is missing. In the campaign, they already had all this information ahead of time.
Whole city just bugged out when the dragon showed up. Elves. Skittish bunch of bastards.
Into Rhinecleft. In the campaign, after their adventure in Pyra, Scanlan casts Mordenkainen's magnificent mansion, which gives Vox Machina access to a lavish mansion in a pocket dimension that they can access from anywhere via a spectral door. I know it would have been unnecessarily complicated, but it is a damn shame that Scanlan's magnificent mansion didn't make it into the cartoon. Anyway, it is that night in the mansion that Vex asks Scanlan to help her make the broom fly. In both versions, he figures out that the broom is activated via a magic word, and agrees to give Vex said word in return for an unspecified favor. In the campaign, Vex agrees to the favor right away, while in the cartoon, she agrees after Scanlan gives her the magic word for free during the battle in Pyra. In the cartoon, the magic word is Valantier.
Valantier? No!
While in the campaign, the magic word is a draconian word for candle, which, according to Laura Bailey, is pronounced Chitu. In the cartoon, Vex has no problem flying the broom or firing arrows while riding it. In the campaign, it is not that simple. It takes a great deal of practice and eventually some modifications from Percy for her to fly the broom adequately. Also that night, Sarkonos visits Keyleth and reveals to her the identity of the one who freed Thordak. This is not revealed in the cartoon, so I'm going to keep it a secret for now. Also that night, Vax has his first dream about the Raven Queen, and Grog experiences his nightmare where he kills Pike and is praised by Kevdak. That morning, over a chicken and mimosa breakfast, our heroes debate what to do next, whether they should go and meet with Osisa's mate or try and get the Titan Stone Knuckles from the Herd of Storm. Grog flat out reveals his origin to the rest of the party and advises them that they should go and see Osisa's mate first, as they should get more vestiges before facing the Herd of Storms, because getting the Titan Stone Knuckles from Kevdak is not going to be easy. So our heroes head to the Frostweld via tree portal and then windwalking. And while flying over Westrom, this is when they discover that the Herd of Storms and Kevdak have taken over the town and are gathering tribute for the Black Dragon Umbrasyl. After having some very insightful conversations with a farmer named Reginald and a herd member named Horace whom they captured and tortured, does Vox Machina decide to stick to their plan and see the Sphinx first. On their way there, they discover a tent city full of refugees from Westrom, whom they agree to tree portal to Whitestone later. While there, Pike rejoins the party via Gatestone. What are you looking at? I honestly do not have any more blind spot jokes. They continue their journey and find the stone obelisk that marks the direction to the Sphinx Temple. Here, they battle some basilisks and discover the petrified body of an old friend, mapmaker Tyriok Godsworth. Pike unpetrifies him, minus his arm, and he agrees to lead our heroes the rest of the way. His time with the party is short-lived though, as our heroes run into a camp of orcs who have human hostages. Vox Machina defeats the orcs, liberates the humans, and sends them back to the Westrom refugee camp, with Gadsworth as their guide. Wow, that guy was handy. Too soon? In the cartoon, Vexalia finds the entrance to the temple alone, while scouting ahead on her broom. In the campaign, she is accompanied by Scanlan, who polymorphed into a crow, and the gnome bard even enters the temple alone before turning back to get the others. In the cartoon, they all enter together at the same time, and have their encounter with the Sphinx right away. In the campaign, their journey through the temple is way more elaborate. They have to swim through underwater tunnels, climb out of a giant hourglass, and traverse diverging passageways before they make it to the Sphinx. In the cartoon, the Sphinx allows them to choose which challenge to undertake before giving them the information that they want. They can choose either the Maze of Madness, fighting Death Gorgons, or to simply wound him.
Guys, Death Gorgons sound cool as fuck!
Yeah, no, they choose to try and wound the Sphinx. In the campaign, our heroes don't get to choose their challenge. The Sphinx simply tells them that knowledge is earned, not given, and then tells them that if they want the info, they must guess his name, which initiates a combat round in which our heroes discover 4 pits on the ground that each contain a different elemental danger. The first one has water. Vexalia sets up the immovable rod, ties the infinite rope to it, and dives into the water. The moment that she does so, 2 letters from the Sphinx's name are instantly known to her. She then uses the rope to get out of the pit, and tells the others what she learned. The second pit is full of quicksand. Percy puts on his plague mask, sticks his head into the quicksand, and gets the next few letters. The third pit has fire. Keyleth simply turns into a fire elemental and goes in and out of the pit without incident, successfully acquiring the next few letters. The fourth pit, however, contains a tornado. Grog jumps into it and gets the 3 final letters. He then attaches the chain of returning to Craven Edge and blindly throws it out of the tornado like a demonic grappling hook. He immediately finds purchase and pulls himself out of the tornado, only to discover that he impaled Pike in the process. Grog immediately runs to tend to his best friend, taking the tiny wounded gnome cleric into his arms as he shouts the 3 letters that he learned to the rest of the party. Thankfully, both Keyleth and Percy made it a point to write down all the letters, and after 4 tries, Percy finally shouts out Kamalgiari, which effectively ends the combat round and ends the challenge. And yes, the Sphinx makes it a point to immediately heal Pike. Boy, is this scene dramatically different in the cartoon. Like I said, our heroes choose to try and wound the Sphinx, which is easier said than done, as they each fail one by one and are tossed into the infinite void, until only Scanlan is left, who chooses to wound the Sphinx emotionally with an 80s power ballad. Again, both versions are good, but the cartoon is just beautiful.
You have done what no other has before.
In both versions, after Vox Machina completes the challenge, Kamalgiori rewards them with one of the vestiges of Divergence, Mythcarver, and then tells them that the Fender's Bow is located in the Fey Realm, and the Titan Stone Knuckles are in Westrom. The difference is that in the cartoon, Kami gives them this information via the use of Mythcarver, while in the campaign he just tells them the information. And not only does he tell them about the Fender's Bow and the Titan Stone Knuckles, but he tells them about 4 other vestiges of Divergence, which I am not gonna list off here because they are inconsequential in both versions of the story. In the campaign, after the information exchange is complete, Kamalgiori transports Vox Machina back to the entrance of the temple via a magical sandstorm. But this is when the cartoon diverts dramatically from the campaign. As the moment that their meeting with Kami ends, they are under attack by the acid dragon Umbrasyl. This initiates an awesome fight sequence where Vox Machina and Kamalgiori take on the Black Dragon together. This is where, in the heat of battle, Grog accidentally impales Pike, and once Kami falls in battle, our heroes decide to make a fast exit. So Keyleth intends to teleport the entire party to the next vestige of Divergence, but Umbrasyl interrupts the spell, which causes it to, you guessed it, split the party. All jokes aside, while it might be slightly annoying that the writers of the cartoon keep splitting the party, this sequence is so amazing that it makes up for the slight annoyance. So Percy, Keyleth, and the twins end up in the Fey Realm, while Grog and the gnomes end up back in Taldore.
Damn. Keyleth, you really need to learn your spells.
The Fey Realm and the Echo Tree, the B-plot. Fun fact, in the campaign, because the party doesn't split, the events that transpire in the Fey Realm don't happen until after our heroes go to Westrom and Gap Shadow, so we will cover that part of the story at the end of this video series. So in the cartoon, Pike heals herself and begs Grog to get rid of Craven Edge. After a bit of inner struggle, Grog jabs the sword into the side of a mountain and snaps it in half, which unleashes a tidal wave of blood of Evil Dead proportions. When Grog wakes up, he discovers that Craven Edge sucked out all of his strength and left him a skinny weakling. None of that happens in the campaign, where our heroes agree to take a short rest outside of the temple before continuing their journey, when suddenly Grog just gets up, walks into a snowy field with Craven Edge in his hand, and drops dead. The rest of the party immediately jump into action to try and save him. Pike starts to cast Revivify, and everyone else tries to contribute to the spell to save their friend. Vax even humbles himself and prays to the Raven Queen. Percy, however, has the most interesting approach. He walks up to Craven Edge and intimidates it by threatening to throw it into a deep abyss if it doesn't put back what it took from Grog. The sword makes a few scary noises at Percy, but the gunslinger doesn't back down. And at that very moment, Grog opens his eyes and comes back to life, choking Scanlan. But that wears off and he eventually lets the gnome bard go. After this, the party argues about what to do with the sword. In spite of just being killed by the demonic weapon, Grog wants to keep Craven Edge, as he wants to use it against Kevdak. Eventually, Pike convinces him that it's not worth it, and casts Greater Restoration on Craven Edge, severing its connection to Grog, making the Goliath realize just how much the sword was manipulating him. Keyleth then takes the sword and vanishes it to another plane of existence via plane shift. And that is how Craven Edge is defeated in the campaign. Meanwhile, in the cartoon, after an awesome travel montage accompanied by an original song performed by Sam Riegel and Ashley Johnson, the gnomes take Skinny Grog to Pike's great-great-grandfather Wilhelm's house, where the wise caretaker makes a magical suppository to get rid of Grog's corruption, which is then administered by Scanlan. In the campaign, their visit to Wilhelm's house doesn't come until much later, and it's way different, and we will talk about it when we get there. Meanwhile, in the cartoon, Wilhelm explains that Grog's strength will return under the right type of stimulation. Pike, however, doesn't want to wait, and feels they should continue to Westrom to get the Titan Stone Knuckles. And this is when Grog confesses that it is his herd and his uncle Kevdak who are in Westrom and have the Knuckles.
Those gauntlets belong to my uncle. He killed me with them.
A test of pride.
Once again, I have to compliment the cast of Critical Role for playing this part of the campaign so smart, very much in the same manner that they approached Whitestone and the Briarwoods. Before heading into Westrom, they do a lot of planning in the mansion. They also make sure to go and check on the refugee camp and make sure those people are okay. They also scout the outskirts of the town, where they unfortunately discover the dead body of Reginald, the farmer who helped them last time they were in Westrom. However, Pike casts Speak with the Dead, and they glean even more information from the spirit of the farmer as far as the condition of the town, how many Herd of Storm members are in the town, as well as how often does Umbrasyl come by to pick up his tribute. In both versions, Scanlan scouts ahead into the town. In the cartoon, he polymorphs into a dragonfly. In the campaign, he just turns invisible. In the cartoon, he witnesses Umbrasyl pick up his tribute. In the campaign, of course, the whole party witnesses this during their last visit to Westrom. Also, Dr. Anna Ripley is with Umbrasyl throughout most of Season 2. In the campaign, outside of Percy learning from Victor that Ripley bought some black powder from him, there is no further mention, let alone appearance, of Anna Ripley throughout the first half of the Chroma Conclave arc. In the campaign, Scanlan makes it to the town square, the most heavily guarded part of the town, and casts Thunderwave, knocking a bunch of herd members on their asses, but losing his invisibility in the process. So Scanlan dimension doors back to the main entrance of Westrom, next to a temple, and then dimension doors inside the temple. And this is when he runs into Kaylee, Dr. Dranzel, and a bunch of refugees. In both versions, they are equally thrilled to see him.
I'm not worried about you, you cock. From what I've heard, it figures you'd run.
Meanwhile, the thunder wave that Scanlan set off in the town square puts the Herd of Storms on high alert, and they start patrolling the streets. Eventually, they find Grog just standing there outside town. They rush him and immediately fall into a trap that Keyleth and Percy set off, and they all fall into a deep pit. Two of them manage not to fall in, but they are quickly taken out by Vox Machina. In the cartoon, Scanlan leads the survivors out of town using his bardic tricks, until he reunites with his allies, where Grog decides to stay behind and face Kevdak, in a beautiful moment that mirrors the scene from Season 1 where Pike left the party.
But what if I need you?
What if I need you?
In the campaign, however, two guards burst into the temple where Scanlan and the survivors are hiding. Scanlan casts Fog to hide the survivors, and under Scanlan's instructions, Kaylee casts Minor Illusion and creates the floating disembodied head of Grog's dad, Stonejaw Strongjaw, which scares the guards away. Scanlan then casts Seeming to make himself, Dr. Dranzel, Kaylee, and all the survivors look like members of the Herd of Storms. They leave the temple and make it to the entrance of the city's sewer system, where Scanlan instructs Dr. Dranzel to lead all the survivors out of town using the underground tunnels. After those folks are safe, Scanlan then goes to rejoin Vox Machina. The rest of the party enters the town and are attacked by a couple of druids in wild shape, but our heroes take them out easily. The entire party reunites in an alley and then take refuge in an abandoned building. This is when they all 100% agree that the best course of action is for Grog to challenge Kevdak one-on-one. And if he or any of the members of the Herd of Storms step out of line, Grog will signal the rest of the party to jump in and kick ass. All the different party members then take turns giving Grog some kind of an advantage. Bardic Inspiration, Divine Blessing, Vexalia even flashes him. I'm not sure what that does, but Grog doesn't seem to complain. In both versions, Grog walks the streets freely until he runs into some guards, where he reveals to them that he is Kevdak's kin and has business with him. In the cartoon, Pike pretends to be someone Grog caught and killed to provide him with further subterfuge. In the campaign, Grog is escorted by the guards to the town square. The rest of Vox Machina follow stealthily on the rooftops. They do run into a few obstacles along the way, but they get past them easily. In the town square, the guards bring Grog to a fellow herd member named Greenbeard, who Grog insults by telling him that the herd has bent the knee to a dragon and are no longer warriors, but a bunch of pisspot squatters. Greenbeard laughs and summons Kevdak, who emerges on the balcony of Margrave Manor. Grog immediately challenges him for the pride of the herd. In the cartoon, Kevdak is in the middle of making an example out of his son Sanroar for challenging his authority, and then asks if anyone else would like to challenge him. Thankfully, there is one Goliath among them who has the balls to accept that challenge.
Remember me.
And that's where we're gonna hit the big to be continued, as we have officially reached the halfway point of this epic compare and contrast, which will continue in 2 weeks on the next cartoon versus campaign.